radical spirituality here at Eshator in the old city overlooking the Temple Mount. Just a couple of announcements that I need to make. I can't remember exactly what they were, but one was the Yom Tov Media Club. Please join the Yom Tov Media Club so we can get the word out to as many people as possible. The other announcement was, I'll be in New York Sunday through Thursday. So wherever you are in the U.S., people used to fly into Israel to join the Possible You seminar. But now people can actually fly into New York, or if you already live in the tri-state area, it'll be in Muncie, Sunday to Thursday, the Possible You. You can go online to it's fine. You can go online to thepossibleyou.org and check that out. It's going to be a men's seminar starting this Sunday, the 28th of July, and the women's seminar starts on Monday. Men's is on non-work hours, the women's on work hours, and then I'm flying back here, and I'm making a wedding in 2 weeks, which everyone's invited to. I'm making a wedding in Ashdod, so it's for all the surfers who like to surf in Ashdod. And anyway, we're going to be making a major party down there. We've got the best band, a full Breslov band, and one of the top singers in Israel, and lots of booze. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. So, in fact, when I was where I was raised in California, it's kind of a narcissistic society in Los Angeles where everything's about you, and it's really all about you. I think there was even a feminine hygiene company that's whole, motto was it's all about you, and I think they must have been from LA or something. And but that was the world there, and anything that cramped your style was automatically nixed. I mean, you just got rid of it. Like nothing, you did everything for you. And it was kind of an interesting society because you might think that's selfish, but these same people on the West Coast speak up when you bother them. So it's interesting, like everything's about you and everything's about them. And if your stuff's bothering them, so they tell you. And then you're immediately, because I don't want to bother anybody. And so it actually works. I mean, I wouldn't want a West Coaster marrying an East Coaster because, the East Coaster is going to constantly be wondering why this person's so inconsiderate. And the West Coast person is going to be constantly wondering why this person's so quiet. Because West Coast people just speak up. When someone's on your toe, you say something, period. East Coast, you just kind of wait for them to figure it out. Anyway, but being raised there, I would say at best I was ill-equipped at raising a family. And the last thing I would have thought of, the funny thing is I actually had this whole bluff. I was what's called a radical environmentalist. You know what radical environmentalism is? Radical environmentalism, most of their activities are actually illegal. But the radical environmentalists are the people who put metal spikes in trees that kill lumberjacks and stuff when their chainsaws hit the spikes. And radical environmentalists do crazy stuff. They climb up trees and sit. I've personally climbed up trees. I haven't spiked a tree, but I've climbed up trees that are being cut down and sat in the tree until they went away. And as soon as they went to the next tree, I just climbed up that tree and sat up there. And they're not going to kill the guy. They're not going to kill the hippie sitting in the tree. So, anyway, the funny thing is, as a Hasidic Jew, you can't imagine me climbing trees that are being cut down. I actually, in the middle of Jerusalem, they were cutting down a tree, and I climbed it. And I sat in that tree, and I saved the tree, and it's still there to this day, like 20 years later. The tree is still there. But the funny thing is, people are walking by the whole time, and there's still people to this day who are like scared to death of me because they feel like I have no fear. And if something's going on wrong, like if someone's doing something off, I'm not gonna stop until they stop doing something that's off. And something that's off is cutting down trees, that's for sure. And anyway, and that's why I speak a lot about the Amazon, etc. But the subject for us is the subject that I was introducing was the last thing I ever thought was that I could raise 8 children, and thank God they come one at a time. Because I mean it's just like it shouldn't be possible that a person with my background should be able to raise 8 kids, and not only raise 8 kids but raise 8 healthy kids and 8 connected kids and committed kids and you know what I mean, like to raise, it's just irresponsible. It's just irresponsible. And coming from the environmentalist background, like when I would, the first time I came to LA and ran into a bunch of environmentalist friends who were coming to, they were at an event that I was at. So I invited my wife and kids to the event. When I walked into that event with my wife, and people saw my children filing in like ducklings, one after the other in height order. And so my old colleagues from the Earth First community, Earth First is a radical environmentalist organization, and so the people from the Earth First community were like Glaser, like you knew better than any of us, like you're the environmentalists, like what is it? There's like overpopulation in one family, and I said to them, you know, and it was amazing timing, by the way, because someone's lid off their cup flew off. Someone's coffee cup lid flew off and like went flying down the bluffs. We were overlooking the ocean. And then it went flying down the bluffs. And my kids just went after it like a competition. As I was speaking, they see like 8 kids just go, wow, in this like competition to catch up to that cat and bring it back. And they, of course, one of them brought it back a few minutes later, like with the victor. And I said, when you're creating more of a problem, I understand. But when you're creating the solution, you should have as many children as possible. When my wife and I committed to each other to build a family, our commitment to build a family wasn't just so that we could have our own selfish needs of having the meaning in life that children bring, and they bring a lot of meaning in life. And you have no idea how much meaning, because you should know that the meaning in your life is going to dry up eventually when you're about 40 or 50 years old. And things are going to dry up a bit. Not saying for everybody, but there are a lot of people, and the majority of people, the meaning will dry up at around age 40 or 50. Now, someone who's connected to Torah, the meaning's constantly going in with a syringe. I mean, it's like you're intravenously your life's meaningful all the time. And anyone who's watching this or hearing me now who's in the 40s or 50s, 60s range knows that if you have a connection to Torah, that is your meaning. That is your meaning. But for the rest of society, for most people, the meaning is the grandchildren. The meaning is that there are all these grandchildren around. And when they constantly okay the fact that people can just put off having a family and put off marriage, put off having a family, just totally postpone the whole thing, which obviously puts you in danger of not even having it, is a major disservice and potentially creating very depressed years later in life. And that's playing hardball for me to say such a thing. And it's not nice for me to say, but it is a major phenomenon. And so you shouldn't take it lightly that you're building a family, because what you're ultimately doing is making the ultimate investment for the rest of your life, so that your life's going to be meaningful. Now, what's meaningful when you're young? What's meaningful when you're young is contributing. But most people have the thrust of their contribution is going to happen by the time they're 50. So what are you going to do? Just live off the fumes from 50 on? Good luck with that. Most people who are big contributors are generally adrenaline freaks to begin with. And you're not going to get a ton of adrenaline over, resting on the laurels of whatever contribution you made during those years. And therefore, having a family is going to be an important part of your life, because later that's going to be filling your days. And that's one of the beauties of living in Israel, is kids generally stay in Israel when you have them. Not every kid, but likely they'll stay. And another great reason is to build your family in Israel is that you'll actually have that time together. Whereas my friends who live in America, their kids are all over the country. They see them, obviously, Thanksgiving and vacations and stuff, they're together. But here in Israel, we're actually with our kids. We're watching our grandchildren grow up. They're growing up in our house. And that's a super big blessing. Anyway, our marriage was based not on us having the meaning in life, though. We really built these kids to be solutions for the world. And I've even explained to their teachers at the beginning of the year, when their kids start with a new teacher, I say to the teacher, I know you got 30 kids, and I know you're going to give them all everything you got to make them great, but I just want you to know that if you put extra focus on the Glaser kid, if you put a little extra focus on the Glaser kid, this child isn't being raised to be like other children. This child is being raised to be a leader. And so whatever you put into that kid will be broadcast outward eventually. It's going to be broadcast. Because that's the way we're raising our children. We're raising our children to be solutions to the world's problems. And you're welcome. But you literally see it true, because my children, who are now from 20, I don't know how old, down to 9, are all in positions of being the nucleus of helping people who need help. That's what they do. My kids are just constantly helping people. And they do so beautifully, and they see it as the meaning of life. It's the difference they can make for others. And it really works to do this. And it's worth it to have a lot of kids if you do this. Now, what I'd like us to do today, though, is something totally different. That was class 1. So that was the class on children and meaning in life. Yeah, you want to say something?
Just real quick question.
Yeah.
You told me about that you had this foundation built with your wife, and that you raised these children that are leaders. What value system did you go on, like when you met your wife? You know, when you were dating, because a lot of us are that age, thinking about like, you know, getting married and stuff. What was that conversation like, and how did you know she was the girl for you?
How did I know she was the girl for me?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not a nice answer. I was a bit of a snobby dater. If any girl ever said to me, "Can we talk about something else other than the meaning of life?" she didn't realize that she had just literally sealed her fate as no longer dating me. And I understand the girl. It's 4 a.m, it's 5 a.m. We've been talking for 12 hours now. You know, like there is a concept of small talk. I just don't have that. But there are those who do. And you know, she was just making a request that we talk about something a little lighter. And anyway, when I finally found a girl who not only could keep going, but she could up me one and up me one and up me one and go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit holes of the meaning of life. So I just said, that's the one. That's the one. And the funny thing is, I wasn't really, that was when I was supposed to not be dating, because I was at Aisha Torah learning in yeshiva. I was a yeshiva boy. So what did? I told the rabbis that when you tell me it's time to start dating, I've got someone in mind. It may not be the one, but I want to at least start with her. And so they told me one day, they just said, it's time to start dating. And I said, okay, so I know which one I want to start with. And they said, okay, so how do we reach her? And I said, I could call her, I know her number. No, I hadn't been talking to her a lot, but I had her number. So I called her up, she was in Sfat. And I called her up, and we spoke for 3 hours. It was just a call to ask her out. But it was a 3-hour call, and we were engaged by the time I hung up. We never went out. We never went out. I never got to have a date with her. Yeah, we were engaged by the time we got off the phone. But since I'm on this story, I mean, you can't believe what happens next. So now I'm engaged, and it's just amazing. You know, I'm engaged to this woman, and like I haven't even seen her in months, and she was teaching in a women's program in Sfat, and I'm teaching in Jerusalem. Well, I was a yeshiva bacher in Jerusalem, but at Aisha Torah, if you're a yeshiva bacher, you teach. And here I am engaged, and all of a sudden I get called into Rav Noach Weinberg's Zatzal's office. And I go into the rabbi's office, the Rosh Yeshiva of Aisha Torah, and he sits me down and he says, listen, I've gotten a bad report on your fiance. And he told me, I'm not going to tell you what, I don't want to offend anybody in case this is you, but he said that she's X, you know, in her worldview, meaning she's one of them in her worldview, whatever them is, which, by the way, had nothing to do with anything at all. It was purely what's called motzi shemra. You ever heard the term motzi shemra? Motzi shemra is character assassination, which is basically someone called the Rosh Yeshiva of Aisha Torah and says, you cannot let Yom Tov Glaser marry this woman because she is X, which was a worldview that wasn't the worldview of me or Rav Noach, who was my Rebbe, and it just wasn't our worldview. But again, this was all pure character assassination. This is the power of Lashon Hara. So Rabbi Weinberg says to me, I'm sorry, you got to break it off. And so you know what I did? I called her up in Sfat, and I said to her, hi, it's me. And I'm like, listen, I've got difficult news, but it's over. We're not going to get married. And she says, silent for a moment, and she says, Baruch Hashem. I said, what's the Baruch Hashem? She says, I was sure we were supposed to get married. I was positive that you were my soulmate. And thank God, because what bigger mistake in the world could you make than marrying the wrong person? I only want what God wants for me. So if this isn't it, I'll move on. I said, okay. I hung up the phone and I said to myself, I got to marry this girl. Because the ex that the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Weinberg, was told was that she was, not part of like the serious like people with real, what's called Yirat Shamayim, like real fear of God. Like, this sounds like a woman with a lot of Yirat Shamayim. Anyway, I was pretty bummed out. And whatever, I went down to the Kotel to pray. And before I went to pray, I pressed the water fountain, or I went to get some water at the water fountain. I made my bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shakol niyeh b'dvaro. Press the button, I start drinking, and I hear a voice behind me saying, you should have pressed the button first before you made the blessing, because how did you know the drinking fountain works? You almost used God's name in vain. At which point I turned around, and there she was. She was visiting the Kotel from Sfat. And she just walked off, because she's not having conversation with a guy she ain't married. So she just walked off to the women's section. I'm watching her walk off saying, I got to marry this girl. And who would have even thought of that? Like, check the water fountain, then make your bracha. Makes sense. Don't just blurt out God's name thinking the technology is going to work for you. First see that it works and then use God's name. So I was like, this kid's amazing. Anyway, so what happened was word got out to her that I was pretty depressed. And so she had already let go of me. And she was shtickle Breslev, and Breslevers go into the forest and pray. So she was doing her forest prayers. They do an hour a day in this forest to pray. And she's out in the forest praying, and she had a whole list of people she was praying for. And she added me to the list that I should be happy. So she prayed that I should be happy. I didn't know anything about that, but whatever. I got that word. Meanwhile, I found out what had really happened, that the whole reason we were broken off was because of someone loose-lipped, jealous person who believed that she left a particular school, her particular school, to go to a school that was less Haredi or whatever, and that was all you had to do. And this woman spoke out against my wife. A leader of a school spoke out against my wife for going to a less observant school, and which was not less observant. It was just a different worldview. And anyway, long story short is I get to, I can't take it anymore. I got to marry this girl. So I met with Rabbi Orlowek, famous Rabbi Noach Orlowek, and he basically said, bring your wife to me. So we both sat there across from him. He just started blushing and blushing, and he was like, you guys are so obvious soulmates. Like, you got to marry each other. He calls her up, Noah Weinberg. Next thing you know, we're engaged. So we're getting engaged. But then she says to me, she can't be on the same continent with me till our marriage. She's flying to New York to be with her parents till the wedding. And then she calls me from New York. She says she wants me. I'm a mountain biker. So she says, we got to get married on the land. Like, literally with our feet on the soil. Like, I don't mind a wedding hall after. We can have buses to a wedding hall. But we're getting married in the forest on the land of Israel. And I'm like, great. She says, get on your mountain bike and ride. So I go 5-hour ride, like a huge ride, because it's not so easy. We got to find a place that's level enough. We got to find a place where the Pinsk Karliner Rebbe, who was in his 80s, can get to the chuppah. We have our grandparents coming. You got to have parking. And she's got to be in the wilderness. Like, putting all that together was difficult. So I rode and rode and rode. I finally find a spot I call her up that night. I found the perfect spot. Took me 5 hours to find. She says, describe it to me. I describe her the spot. And you know what she says? She says, that is the exact spot where I prayed for you. And we literally got married on the spot that she prayed for me when I was down. And you know what the beauty of getting married in the wilderness is you can go back to on your anniversaries, you can go back to the exact same spot. Whereas good luck, like at a wedding hall, like, excuse me, it's our anniversary, so we'd like to like get in there, you know. But we go back that same spot, and she brings a veil, and she walks around me 7 times, and we both just kind of shuckle and cry while we watch our kids playing in the playground around, you know, there's a kind of a forest playground there. And we watch our kids playing each year. There seems to be another one, and we're just crying while she walks around me. And our kids, like our teenage daughters, are looking over at us like, "Oh my God, these two." Anyway, that's the end of that story. Yeah.
It was disappointing for me to hear about Weinberg being affected by the Lashon Hara. Why did he just?
Why didn't he question it?
Why did he question it? Why didn't he talk to your wife, your future wife, on his own, rather than hearing something from somebody else and reacting to what he heard? This terrible
Excellent. That's an excellent question.
Why,
and
know,
if
he's a highly spiritual person.
If you heard the answer, you would fall out of your chair. There's an actual answer, and I totally understand why he did. Meaning, I would have done the same thing. If you heard the answer, you'd understand why. I cannot tell you the answer because I'm protecting someone's character right now. Okay?